Good morning. Today is March 7th, 2025. My name is Paula de la Cruz-Fernandez. This is an interview about Persimmon Early Learning Academy, and we are meeting with Bonnie Bowman for the Gainesville Business History Oral History Project run by the Inquirer Capitalism Program of the History Department at the University of Florida. Understand that for us and for the public, the information that you're providing is a gift, and it is incredible. It is an incredible historical resource, and we dearly appreciate it. This interview will be available on YouTube and at the UF digital collections. Please introduce yourself and say your full name, and if you could spell it, that would be fantastic.
Sure. My name is Bonnie Bowman, Bonnie Bowman.
Wonderful. So why don't we start with your background and how did you get into early childhood?
Sure. So I actually started as a business major, and I was working for a bank, and they needed somebody from the bank to go teach junior achievement in the school. And so I was the youngest, newest person, and I was volunteered. And so when I went, I just loved it. And I was in a first grade classroom, and I was like, this is actually where I'm supposed to be. I was a volunteer of the year that year at the elementary school. And when the semester ended, I changed my major to education, and I quit my job at the bank, and I got a job teaching in a preschool.
Which preschool?
It was called Country Day Care in Clearwater, Florida.
Wonderful. Yes. Where are you from?
I'm from Naples, so I was born there, and I moved to St. Petersburg to go to college at USF after high school.
Great. So what brought you to Gainesville?
I moved to Gainesville. My brother was living up here, and all of my family had moved away from the St. Pete, Tampa area, and they had kind of followed me to college, and then they all moved away. And so I had been coming up a lot to visit him, and I just really liked the community here and decided to give it a try. So I moved here in the summer of 2002.
Wonderful. So how did the idea of you finished your education degree, and then how did the idea of opening a daycare came up?
So I finished my degree, and then I started teaching for public schools. And after I moved to Gainesville,
could you move that? I'm just worried. Awesome. Yeah. Thank you.
So I moved to Gainesville. I was teaching in St. Petersburg for a while in public schools, and I moved to Gainesville and continued teaching. I was a teacher at Norton Elementary. I taught kindergarten there for many years, and then I became the BRT there for 3 years. And as I was the BRT, I started realizing that a lot of the things that I felt were not developmentally appropriate for children, the teachers were still doing them. I thought that we didn't do them. Like, we just listened, we went to the meetings and heard, like, this is what we want you to do now. But then my understanding was, like, what I did, I just went back to my classroom and did what I knew was best for the kids in my class that year. But that wasn't really what was happening. So a lot of children school-wide were being referred to the office, and teachers were struggling with relationships, and the demands placed on teachers with paperwork and, keeping up with the curriculum and the pacing and all of that, they weren't able to really form real relationships with these kids. And it just was not a system that I was loving anymore once I was in administration and saw the whole picture. So after 3 years of being the BRT, I decided to go back into the classroom. The BRT is the behavioral resource teacher.
Got it.
So I got all of the behavior calls. So I decided to go back into the classroom, and I taught kindergarten for a year at Littlewood Elementary. And while I was doing that, I decided to open my own preschool.
What other mentors or experiences or people in that moment kind of made you?
I think, I had Janice Russell as a a mentor that I had at Norton. She was another teacher there who was a veteran teacher who really shared the same philosophy as me. And we always kind of spoke about one day, if we could open our own school, this is how we would do it, you know? And I'm still in touch with her and still have dinner with her, which is really wonderful, and just touch base about what's going on at Persimmon and in the world of education. But yeah, I think it was just that of just kind of seeing the way that things are done in public education and feeling like I didn't want to contribute to that anymore. Even though I really value public education, I feel like we're kind of getting it wrong for kids. We really take the fun out of it and the play, and there's so much push, and I wanted to do it a different way. But I honestly didn't think I could have an elementary school. I mean, in my head, I thought, I'm going to go in, I'm going to open a preschool, and I'm going to give these kids the best foundation that they can get before they go off to elementary. And yeah, so that's kind of how it started. And
now that you say foundation, I feel that there has been a movement towards making sure early childhood education is definitely like a really important moment for a person's life. And so was that something that you learned that was like being taught at the time, or that you...
There wasn't a huge focus on it, but I knew the first 5 years, there's so much brain development. It's the most important time. So I was aware of that, but I don't think that, it wasn't something that people were so focused on back then. I think just now in the last couple of years, it's really starting to be a focus.
Wonderful. Did your business training help you perhaps in this initial time?
No, I was not a good business major. Yeah, my heart just wasn't in it. And I will say the business part is the part that I'm still the worst at, owning the business. I like being with the kids. I don't like doing billing and budgeting and those sorts of things. They're necessary and I have to get through them. But yeah, it's about the kids for me more. And so that's the part that really keeps me tied to it.
How was that, if you remember when you just said, okay, I'm just going to start, what did you do? What does it take to open a daycare?
Yeah, I had no idea. So there are certain requirements, of course, by the state. And I have a master's degree in educational leadership, but I still had to take courses on being a director of a daycare that the state required. So I started taking the classes that were required of me, getting the credentials that the Department of Children and Families requires, and then looking for a building.
Tell me more about that, because your building is a very important one, right?
Yes. So I had no idea really the history of my building when I found it. I knew when I was opening the school, I didn't want something that was institutional looking. I wanted something that felt cozy and welcoming, and like you were getting dropped off at a family member's house for the day was really my goal. And I was searching and I hadn't found anything. And one day I took a different route home from work, from Littlewood to my house. I lived in East Gainesville at the time, and I drove down 6th Street, and on the side of this big, beautiful white building was a for rent sign. And so I called the number, and Kathy, who is the owner of that building, she said, I'll be there in 20 minutes to meet me. And the building had been sitting empty for about 7 years.
Wow.
So she was excited that somebody was interested in renting it. And when she came, I did a walkthrough, and it had been an assisted living before. So it was full of medical equipment and records, and it was being used as storage. It was full of things. And
do you remember the name of that facility before?
It was Serene Way.
Okay.
Yeah, and so I walked in and I was looking around, and I said, I actually love this space. I think it's my school. I can see it, but I have to talk to the city, the zoning, and all of that. She said, well, I'm leaving for China tomorrow for a month, and just handed me the keys.
Oh my gosh.
And said, get it figured out, and I'll talk to you when I get back, and we'll see. Which was amazing. I mean, the amount of trust that she put in me was really, really amazing. So I just really felt like it was meant to be at that point. And I brought people through and they said, you are crazy. This place is just, how are you going to turn this into a school? And I said, I just see it. I know it's going to happen. And so we worked really, really hard.
Tell me about that work. Like, who was it? Friends helping?
It was such
how much money you put in.
So I started Persimmon. I had $20,000 in savings, and that's how I started it. And so it was budgeted down to the penny. It was really, really. I don't feel like you could even do that again these days.
Did you have to apply for a loan, or?
I didn't. Okay. No, I just did it with the $20,000 I had, and so much help from community. It was truly a community effort. We had friends there, cleaning, painting, building, any kind of skill that people had, they were willing to offer, and it was really a beautiful time, and it just became such a beautiful space. And
I can. I love the place. So how long did that take?
So I got that in probably April of 2013, and we opened in September of 2013.
Oh, I never realized that it was so new from when my kids started.
Yeah.
That was 2016. I didn't. Wonderful. So what was that first year when you opened? How did you make sure you had kids? Because you're not a business person, but you do need
yes. So it
kids.
It was very scary, and luckily I knew a lot of people who were looking for a different kind of preschool for their children, and so those initial people enrolled with me, and so I think we were licensed for 62 children, and we started with about 30. And within 6 months, we were full and we had a wait list. And so that just really told me that the community was missing this, and it was something that they were really looking for. So it started out really greater than I had imagined. All of the research I had done said if you can be at 50% capacity for your first year, 75 by the third year, and then 100% in years 4 or 5, you're doing great. So
you were doing great already.
So I just filled a void, and I'm happy I read it correctly, from what I was hearing from people. And so we were full, and we, just kept hiring and filling the spots, and it went really beautifully.
Tell me about the hiring, like what kind of, because I'm guessing, there were many challenges. Doesn't seem like many challenges, like the building kind of came to be, but was there any challenge at this time with hiring, with kids, with parents, with, that you remember kind of changed your way?
I don't know. I mean, when I look back on it, it just feels like everything really fell into place. Hiring is always, I don't want to say an issue, but it's always a struggle, because you want to get the right person, in the right place. And for me, that was, it's the most important part, right? The people who are spending the most time with the children every day. So when I hire, I don't want somebody coming in who has years of experience, and I don't care if they have all of the certifications and all of that. I'm really hiring based on who they are as a person. I can teach you to deliver curriculum. I can help teach you classroom management, but I can't teach you to be an empathetic, kind, loving person. That has to come from within. I can't teach you to love kids. You have to automatically love kids, So that's what I'm looking for. I would rather hire somebody with no experience, but has all of these other characteristics that we're looking for, than somebody who has all of the paperwork behind them, but is missing that spark.
Tell me more about the people that have worked with you.
Yeah, I mean, I think I've, had some really special people over the years, people who truly have a love for children, people who never thought that they would be teachers, but I saw something in them. And, Cody Andrews has been with me since the beginning, since 2013. And she was working in restaurants at the time. And I just said, have you ever thought about being a teacher? And she said no. And I'm like, well, I think you should. I think you would be really great. And so it's just experiences like that. I hired a woman, Melissa, who had just moved from Argentina, and she barely spoke any English, but we used a translation app and did the interview. And I just loved her. And she turned out to be one of the best people I've ever hired. So just things, like that, where that the person doesn't have a lot of experience, but they're the right fit.
Yeah. Well, I definitely agree with you about Cody. She was my son's teacher, and she just really understood him better than any other teacher he's ever had before.
Oh, that's amazing.
Afterwards, actually.
Yeah.
So it's great. Is there anything different that you do during the day for the kids that is not done in other educational settings?
I think for us, we're really play-based and child-centered. So we're not sitting and doing rote memorization. We're trying not to have the children doing worksheets. We really want it just to be a process of learning and exploration for them during the day. And I do know there are other schools doing that, especially now it's becoming more and more popular. But back then, I don't think there were a lot. It was limited. It was Imagine, it was Morning Meadow, 2 other centers here in Gainesville, but not a lot of places. And so, obviously they have limited capacities. And so families were really looking for something else, yeah.
Is there a group or a network of daycares, like you mentioned, Imagine and Meadow? Do you do anything together? Have you done anything together in the past?
So we didn't until COVID, and then we were really kind of relying on each other and reaching out to each other to try to see, how are you doing this? What's your policy around this? And so that's kind of when I started getting involved with other owners and directors. I will say that in the last 3 years, there's been a nonprofit that's come up from Fort Lauderdale, and it's the Business Leadership Institute. It's led by a woman, Robin Perlman, and she has turned into an amazing mentor for me as well. And that organization really focuses on childcare businesses, women because it's mostly women, and a lot of us don't know how to run a business, but we've been taking care of children. A lot of women of color are also in this field and aren't really taken care of. There's no exit strategy, right? So you're like, okay, I'm going to open this business maybe in my home or in a center, and then how do I get out of it? What do I do next? How do I retire? How do I run a quality center? And so she's doing business classes for women, or for any men too, for any childcare owner. And we've had a cohort now going in Alachua County for 3 years, maybe 4 years, I believe. But so I'm actually the lead mentor for that program now. And so I love it because I get to help women have successful businesses, right? They're having profitable businesses. They're increasing the quality of care that the kids are getting. The teachers are getting more education. And I think it's a really valuable program. And that program has gotten me really involved with the community. And so I'm getting to go out into people's schools and meet them and get to know them. And then, we're working together to make the experience better for families.
Right. Wow, that's interesting. So tell me a little bit, maybe it's funny that women, we tend to say we're not good at business, but you just build a business. That is, so tell me more about kind of the back of that business. Like how do you, and how has it progressed? How do you do bookkeeping, making sure you paid all the bills, all of that seems so, I think when we say we don't do business is because we say we don't do the boring part of business.
Right, yeah.
But we still are doing it.
Oh, yeah.
So how has that changed? Also with technology, what kind of software did you use at the beginning, and then what do you use today?
So at the beginning, we didn't use any software. We didn't use anything. I was filing my unemployment taxes by hand. I mean, it was just all self-taught, right? You're saying, okay, I've got this business now, and there are these rules. I guess I'm going to figure it out. I didn't have any money, so I have to figure out how to do it. So I did that for a few years. And then once we started making a little bit of money, I was like, I've got to get some help. So we started using QuickBooks. I hired an accountant. And
3 years in? That's a lot of work.
Yeah.
That you did before.
Yes, it was a lot. But yeah, I just, I took an online class on how to use QuickBooks and just really kind of dug in and started teaching myself how to do it. And there are so many things that you just don't know about, of things that have to be filed with the state. And sometimes I was late doing it, and then you get a letter in the mail that says you're supposed to do this. So you're like, okay, that's another thing I have to learn about today. And you just do it, So, that's kind of how it went. And now we still use QuickBooks. We use Brightwheel to communicate with families, for billing, for things like that. And then we've just created a lot of systems in-house.
Like what? Tell me.
Just for ease of things. So a lot of communication, and a lot of if somebody calls with interest, and there's a system for setting up a tour, for scheduling a tour, for following through with the tour, and then follow up after the tour, so that we're making sure that we're communicating with them. Nobody's falling through the cracks. And so we've really just over the years developed those sorts of systems. And there are systems for everything, from enrolling a new student to making sure we're up to date on the immunization and physical records, to the human resources stuff that needs to be finished, and all of the teacher training. And we're Apple accredited now, which is a state accreditation. And so keeping up with that paperwork and those rules and regulations. And it's just, as it grows, I didn't love the bureaucracy of the public school, but as your business grows, you have to put some of that stuff in there, or it fails. And the trick is keeping it balanced, right? So it still feels small and lovely and cozy. And
Absolutely.
Yeah.
How about the managing of this of the staff? Like, do you have weekly meetings? Is there anyone that you have already delegated that part, like the kind of curriculum and?
So this year we grew a lot. We opened a second location. Our elementary school now goes to 5th grade, and so we have a director of the preschool, and then we have a director of programming for the elementary school. So Marissa and Valerie are super helpful, and they have been wonderful as I've dealt with the expansion at Millhopper. So they are doing a lot of staff meetings. They're doing a lot of the trainings of new employees, those sorts of things, handling the tours and enrolling new students. And then I have Miss Whitney is at the Millhopper location with me, and she is training to be the director. And so I've just been mentoring her this year to help her get through. And, we have something called the Persimmon Vibe, and everybody gets trained in the Persimmon Vibe. And so just really trying to transfer that vibe over to the new location and get the families into it, and the staff and the students. And it's been a real focus this year, but that's how we operate, and what our goal is to keep is that feeling that was at our original location. That's something I don't ever want to lose.
Before I ask you more about the growth, if you could say in 30 seconds, what is the Persimmon Vibe?
So the Persimmon Vibe is really being a community, being empathetic towards one another and taking care of each other. It's respect, it's kindness, and putting the children first.
Mm-hmm. Wonderful. When was the first thinking about, or did you came with the idea already of kind of extending after VPK, extending?
I did not have that idea, but the parents had that idea. And so after about 2 years of being open, the parents were saying, we don't want to leave. We want to stay. I hear the persimmon bubble a lot. We want to stay in the bubble. And will you open a kindergarten? And so I thought about it and I thought, oh, I don't really want to have an elementary school, but maybe just a kindergarten. So, but I had to find the right teacher. That was the most important thing. And it just so happened that through the grapevine, I heard about Amy Clay. She had been a teacher at Expressions for many years and had taken the year off and was doing homeschooling a couple of children who had special needs kind of privately for their families. And we just met and started talking, and she said, I would love to do a kindergarten with you. And then we decided to add a first grade and then a second grade. And then we were absolutely going to stop at second grade. But families just kept saying, we're not ready to go.
Wow.
Yeah. And so COVID, kind of threw a wrench into things. But then we added third grade and fourth grade. And now this year we have fifth grade.
Oh my gosh.
Yes.
And a new location. In both locations, do you have up to fifth grade?
No, the new location in Millhopper has infants through VPK.
Got it. Tell me about challenges. So you just mentioned COVID. What besides COVID were there?
I think, staffing can become an issue. Unfortunately, early childhood has a high turnover rate. A lot of people kind of stop in on their way to a career. And so it's really hard to get people. It's not a great rate of pay. It's not a super respected job. People don't see it as a professional job, which it is. It's one of the most challenging jobs. And as we said earlier, it's the most important time in a child's life and their development for their brains. So, it's difficult because it's a physically demanding job. It's an emotionally demanding job, but historically it doesn't pay well. And because it's women's work, right? It's babysitting. And so that's been a goal of mine, is to try to help professionalize the field, to get people to earn a living wage doing this. So that's been a challenge of coming up with funds, trying to find the balance of, it's a mortgage payment, right? To send your child to preschool. It's crazy. And so trying to balance how much to charge families while also being able to pay my teachers well enough and provide them with benefits and those sorts of things is probably the biggest challenge.
I'm sure. Yeah. And it's private. So is there any kind of support from any, besides the parents, that you can use to fund the business?
Yeah. No, I mean, we do VPK through the Early Learning Coalition, and that's just the year before kindergarten, but that helps, it gives the parents some relief. It pays for 540 hours of instruction, but it only pays like $5 an hour per child.
Oh, wow.
So it's not a huge help, but it does take some pressure off of parents for paying. There is a school readiness program that will also supplement for lower income families, and we are considering adding that next year because as the prices go up for everything, we just want to make sure that we're still available to, to families. And I feel like what we're just providing is such a special thing, and all children should have access to this, which is part of the reason I'm involved with the Business Leadership Institute and trying to help, because it shouldn't just be the parents who can afford to pay for it. It should be everybody.
Yeah. What about COVID? Tell me.
COVID.
And that's the time when my kids had to, just the youngest, she was just had to leave, and it was so sad.
Yeah, it was really, really sad. We really didn't know what to do. I mean, I remember it was Friday the 13th. It was March 13th. It was a Friday, and we got this message that schools were shutting down, and everybody was panicked, and we just didn't know. So we thought 2 weeks. We'll be closed for 2 weeks. And then for us, that 2 weeks turned into 10 weeks. The most amazing thing about that was the parents were so supportive. It really showed me the community that we had built, because parents were still paying tuition because I paid the teachers the whole time. And it makes me emotional because it was just so supportive and wonderful. So we did online classes. We tried to supplement however we could. But it was just a difficult time. I think that, the children were confused, and everyone was scared, and, we were all still disinfecting our groceries, and it was such a scary time. And then coming back with the masks, and the kids being so little, and the 2-year-olds wearing masks in class. And I do feel like they really helped cut down on the spread of COVID, and I'm so happy that we used the masks, because it did, I think, help us stay open and keep people well. But it was just such a time, and
it was difficult.
It was so difficult, yeah. And we are still seeing effects of it. I think children who were born during that time, or who were just about to go into preschool, but then it kind of stopped, they're different.
Yeah.
They're not socialized as in the same way. And and those kids are struggling, the world was shut down at such an important time for them. And so we're still seeing it.
How do you structure tuition? So
basically I try to take the cost of care. I look at, all of the bills, everything that we have to pay, how much I want to pay teachers, and I just kind of average it out per child, and that's kind of how I set it. So, and I try to pay attention to other schools and what they are charging, and stay competitive, and I don't want to be too overpriced, but I do have to, I have to pay the bills that I have to pay. So, it's really just based on the cost of care.
So does it change yearly then?
It does. So we typically add 3 to 5% each year. I try not to do it every year, or I might, like, if I can control it enough so that maybe this year it's 3%, but next year it might be 5% or 4% or something. Yeah. But when I'm trying to give teachers a 3 to 5% raise each year, I mean, that money is just going directly to teachers.
So it is surprising, I think, that Gainesville has actually so many kind of alternative education places, even though, and this has changed, right, in the past 20 years, you think?
Sure.
So besides, that's it, beyond Gainesville, how do you think this kind of education is evolving?
I think it's starting to become a little bit more mainstream, but I would say, Gainesville is, we're kind of a special place. We're a bubble in the middle of this red state, right? And so I think that our parents in this community have a different approach to parenting and child rearing and the care that they want their children to receive.
Right.
But it is kind of branching out more, I think, as the gentle parenting style and play-based learning and the sensory needs of kids now becomes more of something that other communities are aware of, or it is spreading a little bit more for sure.
Nice. Have you faced any regulatory challenges in Florida specifically?
I haven't, and the reason I haven't, I think, is because there's a big push for parent choice right now and the privatization of education. And so since the legislation is pushing that, I think they're hesitant to regulate what we can do because they want to give parents the choice.
Right.
Yeah, it's an interesting place to be right now.
Right, because I mean, like you said, you believe in public education and education for all. I'm imagining.
Yes.
But the kind of the public side is not really working for everyone.
It's true, yeah, and it's really bittersweet for me because in a perfect world we would have this kind of choice in public education, right? Like, and parents could still choose if they wanted something more traditional, if they wanted Montessori, or and I think ideally that choice should be in the public school,
right?
But that's not how they're doing it. So yeah.
Well, maybe that will perhaps have you thought about how that might help in that providing scholarships. Like I'm thinking of schools that are private but do provide like these scholarships or different ways to get to more people maybe.
Yeah, so now in 2023, I believe the Florida legislature passed House Bill 1, which gives all families access to their school money. So they can use that money at any school of their choice, private or public, or even to homeschool their children now. So finances aren't really a barrier anymore in the elementary space. Yeah, so it's just more about parents being aware that they have the right to choose that. And that's a whole other complicated kind of thing to get into because it is pulling money out of the public schools. And yeah, it's a
there will be consequences there too.
Yes, there will be, yes.
So tell me about marketing. So you said it's a lot of word of mouth. That's how I heard about Persimmon when I came. But has that changed? Have you ever put more finances into like reach out and putting your mission out there?
Yeah, I've been word of mouth until this year, and with the expansion, it's the first time I've ever used any sort of advertising. So it's really interesting for me because I was so fortunate not to have to do that, and now I have more spaces to fill, right? So I need to get out to more families. And so we hired a local women-owned advertising agency, Whole Heart Agency, and they came in and just helped us like do some social media things and create some reels and things like that. And Alice is her name. She's a wonderful new business in town. And so we've worked with her. That's kind of the most that I have done at this point.
And what does it involve? Like besides social media, do you do?
I haven't done any print advertising yet. I've spoken with the university about possibly doing a sponsorship on the radio. And so I'm just exploring a lot of things now. And I think that with things happening with the Department of Education and more privatization of schools, I want people to know that we're here and that, we are an option for them. So,
yeah. That's interesting. Was there any moment when you thought maybe with this growth that things might not work?
I never thought it wouldn't work, but it's definitely more difficult than when I opened the first center. So there's a lot more money at stake, so that maybe makes it feel a little bit more serious also. But I walked into a whole culture that was already existing, and it was very opposite of what the Persimmon culture is and the Persimmon vibe. So it's really been a lot of work to convince families that I'm there to partner with them, and that I did have to raise prices a little bit because I had to give teachers raises, and convincing families, I promise it's worth it, if you'll just trust. So that's been the challenge now this year with the new location, is just building that community of trust. At the 6th Street location, families know me. They've known me forever. Their kids have all come through. Their neighbors' kids have come through, and these families are new to me. And some of them knew about Persimmon but couldn't get in, and we had such a long wait list, or some of them have never heard of us. So, there have been times when I'm like, I don't know if we're going to fill up the school, because it's just a different beast. And we're making progress, and we've got a really nice cohesive team now. And
and it's really interesting because when you think about private education is usually religious. It's more even strict. Like you think, well, they're going to be even more like academic, but
right.
It's just such a different.
We are not, yeah.
But it's wonderful because you still put kids in middle school, right? Like that's the goal, to make them grow. I am very interested also in knowing your experience as a woman, as a businesswoman. So and you mentioned already being in the childcare business, like a woman. Is it really a super female dominated, or is there any level when it starts being male and then we start seeing problems there?
So in early childhood, it's female dominated. It's, preschools, daycares, home centers, it's a majority women. We have a few men who are owners, but it's not typical. In elementary ed, and even as you get higher in middle and high school, you start to see more men. And I think now we're starting to see. I have a male VPK teacher, which is very rare.
I also know him.
Yes, Mr. Bob. But that's not typical. And sometimes families come and they're like, oh, wow, I didn't know that you had a male teacher. People are often surprised to see men in early childhood. But definitely as you move up and you get into elementary, we are seeing more male classroom teachers. But, when I started, the men were all the principals. They'd never even set foot in the classroom. And so that is changing. And, they are requiring men or anybody to have classroom experience now before they're a principal. And so I think that those are, valuable to the profession, and those are great steps for the leadership to know what it's like. So I would say it's changing a little bit, but probably not as quickly as it should.
Well, and I think, probably the most important thing is that we just start valuing that, at the same level, and not that we need men in the classroom, which we do, but what is important is that what it is like rightly valued.
Well, that's exactly it, right? And it goes back to what I was saying earlier, that it's women's work or it's babysitting. It's not something for men to do, but it's not true.
Right.
Yeah.
So just to start wrapping up the interview, what's next? What is the future of Persimmon?
I don't know. I think it's still unfolding. I am partnering now with they're going to start with a summer camp this year, and that's for students with exceptional needs. There are no aftercare summer camps in Alachua County that are specifically for those students who need maybe one-on-one or smaller groups or special accommodations in camp. So we're going to pilot a program this summer for those students and their families. And that's exciting. That's with a new nonprofit called Limitless Adventures. And so I'm excited to do that. And then we might roll that into an aftercare program in the fall.
Okay.
So that's kind of what we have on the horizon right now. Yeah, and then, just trying to improve our elementary program. Since it's been growing, we want to make sure that we've got some real consistency and cohesiveness through the grades, and just ensuring that there are no holes and that the children are getting everything that they need from kindergarten through 5th grade. So that's our big focus right now.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Bonnie, for this interview today. It was wonderful.
Thank you for the invitation. I appreciate it.